An American Werewolf in London, directed by John Landis, was released in 1981 and, in my view, is possibly the best true horror comedy that has ever been made. Now, what do I mean by that? There are lots of films uh, that are just straight up comedies that have horror elements to them. So I'm thinking of films like, Young Frankenstein, Shaun of the Dead. Those are comedy films. You're not meant to watch those and be genuinely scared. And then you get these films that genuinely do ride the line. They want to be both scary and funny. Some people would consider a film like Gremlins to be in that category. I've always thought that veered more to the comedy side. Tremors is another good example that came out in, I was going to say the 80s, I think it was 1990, with Kevin Bacon. It rides the line between horror and comedy, but I still think that's not as much of a horror, it's more of a comedy overall. Having said that, I do love that film, but An American Werewolf in London is both very, very funny and also very, very scary. Genuinely so on both counts. And I can't think of any other film that really has that, to be honest, that you're watching it and it's frightening, but it's also a comedy. It's not meant to be taken completely seriously. Um, so that's my introduction to this film. It's a simple enough plot, really. You've got two American backpackers, um, in they're ventured into the Yorkshire moors, and one night one of them is attacked by a werewolf, fatally. They're killed in the attack, and then the other one is taken to hospital in London and awakens to discover that he might be, in fact, a werewolf. Now, as I said, the plot's simple enough. I've always thought it's strange that if they're in the Yorkshire moors, and they're getting taken to hospital, why does it get taken all the way to London? I mean, I guess if it was, I guess an American werewolf in Leeds or whatever doesn't really have the same ring to it, or an American werewolf in Huddersfield or somewhere else. So that was strange, but I guess it sets the scene and it gets the film going. Um, so I'll talk a bit about just what works with this film. So you've got this really strong atmospheric horror element to it. The film starts with the two young Americans walking on the moors. They both have great chemistry. They're two actors who haven't really done very much else. I think their background before that film was in like commercials in America. But their camaraderie is quite fine. They have good, as I said, good chemistry together. Um, and that whole scene where they're being sort of stalked by the wolf on the moors is just perfect. It's got such great suspense. The sound design is perfect. You're hearing, especially when you're watching it for the first time, you hear all the different, you hear all the sounds with them, and it just builds the tension and keeps building it like a true horror film. And the whole scene, I mean, I imagine it must be a difficult thing to do, to try and to try and film something that's lit only by moonlight, especially when you're filming in a country like the UK. I believe they filmed. It's supposed to be Yorkshire, but they filmed it in North Wales. So I mean, even if you've got a full moon, you're not guaranteed uh, zero cloud cover. So I mean, it's really impressive the way that they did it, and it's very atmospheric, very misty. You can see the fog in their breath. It's really really well done, really tense scene. And similarly, there's a lot of suspense later in the film when you get to the tube scene, set at Tottenham Court Road tube station in London. You've got the sort of smartly dressed businessman that's chased by the wolf through the empty tube station. That's really suspenseful. No music in any of these scenes as well. They don't really use. There is a score to the film, but it's used very very sparingly. Um, and yeah, it just makes for some really creepy set pieces. There's some after our protagonist essentially is taken to London. He has these very vivid dream sequences. Some of them are just insane. There's scenes where his house in America is like invaded by these like Nazi werewolf creatures. It's so bizarre, but it's very very disturbing. I guess, I mean, those scenes you don't really know. they're horrifying when you watch them, but then when you start to think about it, that's when the humor starts to creep in. You're like, because at the scene where his family's home is invaded, they're all watching like, I think, the Muppets or something on television. Interestingly, the voice of Kermit the Frog plays a role in this film, which is quite humorous. The voice of Kermit the Frog and Yoda, same guy. Bet you didn't know that. Um, but those, sorry, that was a tangent. But the dream sequences are very very disturbing in this film, very creative as well. And of course, no review of this film would be complete without talking about the sort of breathtaking transformation sequences from our protagonist into the werewolf. So this was made in 1981. No CGI, computer special effects just weren't a thing. They were still about 10 years away, and yeah, the effects in this film are just incredible. It's all practical. The making of documentary in this film goes into detail about what the special effects team did, because it must have been a really hard task to do because the entire transformation scene, it lasts about, the first one anyway, it lasts about 5 minutes, and you see, his hand stretches, his spine like pops out, and I guess the money shot, so to speak, is when his face starts elongating, and it's really well done, fantastically edited, and it must have been a nightmare given that it's a very well lit scene. He's in his the nurse's living room, and all the lights are on, and you can see in detail everything that's going on. It must have been very challenging to do, but it stands out as one of the best practical special effects I think I've ever seen. Very very well done. Incredible, I guess, even to this day. So the horror aspects of the film are handled very very well. It is like a true horror film from that period, from the 70s and the 80s. But it's also a comedy film, and John Landis, the director, is also known for directing some of the best comedy films of the era. He directed Trading Places. He directed The Blues Brothers, and he really injects that witty, sardonic, almost sort of humor into this film, and it's a trademark of most of his films. But there's just so much that's intentionally humorous in this film. And it's a real mixture because you've got a lot of like deadpan British humor throughout the film. A lot of, I guess you could say, fish out of water humor. You've got the contrast at the beginning where you've got the two American tourists that are from like New York or New Jersey or somewhere, and they go to this working man's English pub in like the north of Yorkshire, and they come into the pub and just everyone goes silent, and there's like miscommunications, and it's just a lot of like situational humor like that. And again, later on, when the London doctor, the posh London doctor, goes to check things out at the village in Yorkshire, he's a fish out of water as well, and you get some humor just in the line delivery. It's very very I guess deadpan really is the best way to describe it. Just not it just works. It just works. Um, and yeah, I think the music choice as well kind of helps fit this tone because there was a score composed for the film, but the music that's used most effectively throughout it are this collection of pop songs, all of which have the word moon or wolf in them, and it's used throughout the film, and it hammers home that tongue-in-cheek message that ultimately this film is not to be taken too seriously. You're allowed to laugh at things that are going on, um, and I think that works beautifully. I think that's what really sells the tone of the film, including especially the ending. I mean, the ending's quite taken in isolation, is quite dark, and I believe some reviewers, especially contemporary reviewers, thought that the ending was quite abrupt. There really needed to be more. They really need to be more fleshed out. I disagree. I think, given the tone of the film, the ending didn't need to be any more protracted than it was. And then after it ends, you've got a hard cut to the credits, and it's playing like this really sort of upbeat 50s pop song, just to remind you that don't be too sad. It's a film, and I think that's what works so great about the film. It's a pure unadulterated entertainment. It represents the best of what horror can be, to be honest, because you don't want it's fun to be scared, but ultimately you want there to still be that fun element. And I think this is I'm pretty sure I've seen this tagline on a lot of film posters over the years, but I think An American Werewolf in London can best be summed up as the best fun you'll have being scared, because it is just that perfect combination. Um, and also, it's also as someone who lives in the UK, it's a perfect time capsule movie. Watching it today, it really is a window into what life was like in the early 80s. Just in the most mundane ways. When they're walking about the streets in London, when they're going into the pubs and the shops and everything, and in the hospital. I mean, it really is a time capsule of a movie, and there's just such a charm to it from that perspective. So overall, An American Werewolf in London is, in my view, I think I'm going to say it's the best horror comedy film that's out there. I'll probably possibly tied with Tremors. I'm not entirely sure, but it's such a superb film. I'm going to give An American Werewolf in London 83 out of 100. It's worth checking out.